flying gives you basically freedom to move in almost any direction you want to. Now, I've had my pilot's license since about 1970. And in 1991, I found a way to get somebody to pay for it, my instrument rating. And all they say on my pilot's license is airplane, single engine manned, instrument, airplane. That means I can fly when I can't see the ground. And basically, that is a pain in the... That is a pain. Flying is fun. Flying is fun when you can see the ground, when you can see what's around you, when you can see the sky, when you can see the attitude of the aircraft, when you can see everything. Flying is fun. Instrument flying is a lot more complex, and frankly, I've never been much more than an adequate pilot, but I still don't like instrument flying, because either you're flying under the hood where you can't see outside of the cockpit, or you're flying in the fog where you can't see the wings of the airplane, or the ground, or the ceiling. Now, I have passed around certain instruments that will tell you how complex flying is. And on page 11 of the flight manual, you get an idea of the arrangement of instruments and flight control devices in the cockpit. So everybody needs to look at page 11 to find out exactly what you're seeing, all that you're seeing when you're flying instruments. And when you're flying with an instructor, you have a hood that goes over your head and keeps you from seeing anything but what you're shown on that picture. Now, you've got to adjust a series of basically 10 instruments, and they all have to be adjusted using the flight controls of the airplane. And they have to be arranged to where all these instruments say basically the same thing. You're flying straight, narrow, or you're descending, or you're ascending. Now, the instruments are the airspeed indicator, the attitude indicator, which shows you the position of the plane in relation to the horizon, the heading indicator, which tells you where the heck you're going, or at least which direction you're pointed, the altimeter, which shows you how high you are, the vertical speed indicator, which shows you how fast you're going up or down, automatic direction finder, which basically is the beam you fly on to get to various points along your route, the magnetic compass, which tells you which direction the plane is pointed. It doesn't tell you which direction you're flying, because you've got to take into accommodation winds and everything else. And that instrument that I sent around is basically the compass and the magnetic computer, which allows you to figure wind speeds, air speeds, and direction. And that is a non-electronic, but that is a computer. The clock, which tells you what time it is. And you need to kind of note when you take off, and when you're going to land, and how much fuel you've got, because the clock is very important as to the amount of fuel you've used. And then the Omni rangefinder, which is basically the radar beams that you fly on. Now, flying airplanes has always been nothing but fun for me, because you get to do this thing where you can go up, down, sideways, over, under, around, and it's fun. And I've always had a good stomach, and I like playing in roller coasters, and I like flying planes kind of crazy. That's why I say I'm more or less an adequate pilot. I've never crashed yet. Now, flying instruments, basically you've got to use the instruments you see in that picture, which are mechanical devices that are run by the air pressure, they're run by computers, they're run by compasses, they're run by things that spin around. They're run by mechanical elements. And you've got to use these 10 instruments to, number one, to tell where you've been, to give you an idea of where you are, and also to tell you in which direction you have to go to get where you want to be. Now, I don't like flying instruments, but one time to watch a space shuttle take off, and my uncle used to be in charge of flight characteristics for, he was there when they made the moon launch, so he worked at Cape Canaveral. And he lived in O'Galley, which is now part of Melbourne. So I decided one day to put my little family inside a little aircraft, Cessna 172, which has 4 seats. I got 2 little boys, and I made them sit in the back. I've got a wife who is nervous as hell on flying, pardon the language. But instrument flying, she keeps me well informed of what the altimeter says. Every 100 feet, she gives me the altimeter reading. It's the only instrument she can read. And dadgummit, she keeps reading it out loud. But I was flying to Melbourne, which is the biggest general aircraft airfield near Cape Kennedy. And we left the day before the scheduled flight. We packed for 5 days because with a space shuttle, you don't know when it's really going to take off. And you've got to be prepared. And fortunately, I had my uncle, my aunt, my cousins, and a spare bedroom down there. So, and they have a beautiful house on the bluff overlooking the bay. So it was basically a vacation. It was a vacation until it turned into Instrument Flying Rules, IFR. Now there's VFR, Visual Flying Rules, those are the fun rules. IFR, Instrument Flying Rules, is when you can't see anything. And you've got to use those cockpit instruments to guide you. Well, we took off from PDK, and I've shown you an instrument, basically a flight log, and I couldn't find the log to this flight. I think my wife probably destroyed it. But because we got into basically the fog somewhere past the Georgia line. And we had to make an instrument approach. We couldn't see the airfield, so we had to approach according to the vectors we got from the ground and according to the instruments I had on the thing. Well, we were flying, and I was following the approach rules exactly. And finally, we broke out of the ceiling at 500 feet. And I could see the runway. Basically, the runway was close to where it was supposed to be. But since I could see it, I could adjust the airplane to get to the runway. And I landed it. Once I landed, shut down the aircraft, my wife said, if it's IFR, we're taking the bus. That is Instrument Flying Rules, and for your knowledge and entertainment. Thank you.